Emil Guillermo. Emil, I'm up to you. This is our program. Emil Amok's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable. We do this show Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific live. We do it live for a reason, just to, it's the same way Walter White, right? Started his business in a car wash, the fictional Walter White, right? Car wash in New Mexico, because he felt alive. So I don't do anything as dangerous as the fictional Walter White, but I am doing this live stream for you. Whether you be on YouTube at, well, YouTube, the Emil Guillermo channel, Facebook at emilguillermo.media, or right here on YouTube. I mean, you might be like scanning YouTube and you see this guy talking live at you and it says live. What that you might stop, say, is this like the car accident? You turn your neck to see what went wrong? What's happening? Or this way. Anyway, we're here. And it's at 2 p.m. live Monday through Friday, but as you know, it's like 147. I keep saying, "Oh, I'll do it at 150," but I just am. I'm eager. I'm. It's not ADD or anything like that. I just, while I'm waiting, just sort of pacing, I say, like, just turn it on. So we're here live, and we're here early. This is what I call the lanyap, the little something extra on our show, which is called the takeout, because we are still taking out. I went to a restaurant yesterday for the first time. Well, not for the first time. I've been going to restaurants, but I thought, well, maybe with the indoor masking thing dropped, maybe we'd be able to sit somewhere indoors, although it was kind of chilly. But I went to the counter and they were still a takeout. So takeouts are still cool. I'm still for takeouts. I'm glad I took out. We took out, drove back, had a good meal. Anyway, a meal amongst takeout. On this show, we ask the question, what does an Asian American think? WDAAAT. What that? No, what does an Asian American think? Because they don't ask us. They never ask us. I know they're starting to. They're starting to ask us because they say, well, what's this 23 million people over here? What are they doing? We don't know these 23. Aren't the Filipinos Spanish? They're not Spanish. Okay. I thought all the Asian Americans were Chinese. Oh, they're not Chinese? Well, the Koreans then. But they're more Indians than Koreans? Well, how about the Japanese? Certainly they're more Filipinos than Japanese, but we thought they were brown. See, they don't know. They don't know. That's why, what does an Asian American think? Still an apt question in 2022. And we'll try to answer that question. What does an Asian American think? Would that, WDAAAT, right here on the Micro Talk Show of the AAPI, for lack of a better phrase. I prefer the phrase AAXs, the Asian American X, fill in your ethnicity. AAX, right? Or you can just be an ALL, because it's all diverse. We're all humanity. We're all one, right? Inner beings, like Thich Nhat Hanh said. Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Buddhist monk who died recently, who is, I mean, I came to discover him late. And even when I first discovered him, I went away. I resisted, thinking, oh, that's just hocus pocus, talk to yourself kind of stuff. But as many of you know, I've discovered my meditative self, and I think Thich Nhat Hanh is like, as they say, the cat's meow. And now he's gone, and his words sort of reverberate still. Anyway, the ALLs, that's who alls the rest of us are. This is your show. So it's been a weird weekend, right? I mean, you know, that the war was going to continue. It wasn't going to end magically, right? We're still going to pay attention to that war, but now I wonder, like, how much longer. I mean, I gather the news isn't going to come off the war. I mean, you're talking about millions of people who are fleeing Ukraine. You're still talking about attacks on Ukraine. So, of course, no one's attention is going to go off Ukraine. But I'm surprised by friends of mine, some people I know keep saying, "Well, Emil, there were other conflicts. There are other things. There are things that we aren't getting in the news because Ukraine is it. Ukraine is the story. It is the world story. This is the existential story. I mean, what happens in Burkina Faso, what happens in Eritrea, they're all important, right? But this Ukrainian episode of the Russians, it's more than an episode. I don't mean to, make it into a euphemism. It's a war. The invasion that turned into a war. This is an existential moment for the West, an existential moment for democracy. So it has to be viewed, because the moment we take our sights off it, then Putin does whatever he wants. More nuclear power plants under siege. Who knows? More civilians dead. I mean, I think that was the thing this weekend that got me. I mean, I'm looking at the New York Times. I got my Times here. Outgunned, Ukraine fends off attacks. I mean, they're doing their best over there. But that picture, Lindsay Adario's picture. Lindsay Adario is legendary among journalists. She wrote the story behind this photograph, but she also took the picture. It's a woman with her two children, her teenagers. They're trying to get across a bridge. They got struck by an artillery shell. They didn't make it. Artillery shell. Someone asked today, what's the difference between an artillery shell and a bomb? Well, I know people like to use their terms indiscriminately. Bombs, it has the same effect. Devastating. But really, it has more to do with the delivery system. A bomb is from in the air. An artillery shell is from some kind of weapon, some kind of either handheld weapon or from a tank. But it has the same effect. And that picture, like I said, all you have to do is to see that, and why we must continue to pay attention, even though it's been more than a week. We have to continue to pay attention to what's going on in Ukraine, because as the artillery shells come in, as Kyiv and the other cities get surrounded, as the Russians break their ceasefire agreements during attempts to evacuate cities, as the Russians, they have more manpower. They have more, can they be replenished? That's an issue. That will be an ongoing issue. But they outnumber the Ukrainians. And if it becomes a war of attrition, by sheer numbers, the Russians are the favorites at this point. We got to look at this. We got all that happening around these key cities, around Kyiv. Even Lviv is now saying, "Hey, they're out on the west, and they're saying we have enough. We have enough refugees. We're at capacity." I talked to Peter Germany today for the upcoming podcast we're doing. They're saying that they're sending people around from Germany to go up through Moldova. So it's not like a straight shot, because if you get into Ukraine from the Polish border, well, you got to hope, cross your fingers, you got enough gas or diesel to get through. So some people are getting to the border by way of Romania, then through to Moldova, and then at the border, ready to go in to help replenish. In the case of the PETA folks, they're trying to bring food for dogs who are starving. And in goes one group, and then out comes groups with pets, animal companions, saved, strays. They're trying to save animals. Incredible what groups, NGOs, groups like PETA, individuals are trying to do. Not just for the humans. The humans are important, and everyone is helping them first. But then what about the beings that aren't heard, are ignored, are more often than not abandoned? So that's this weekend you have to think about, well, what are we going to do, right? And here's Zelensky. I don't know if you heard Zelensky on this is him through a translator talking about how we're just talking about murder now.
It seems it is not enough for the Russian troops. Not enough ruined destinies, crippled lives. They want to kill more. This is murder. Deliberate murder.
Deliberate murder. I mean, war is bad. War is already bad, but now there doesn't seem to be any logic behind this except to go in and smash the Ukrainians. Going after civilians, just this, more than a week after, this is a message to the West. And as I said in my column today, I updated my column that was in ALDEF, aaldef.org/blog. That's my column. And I talked about the prospects of should we put those tough sanctions in now? Shall we pump? Shall we pump for peace? And if you go to inquirer.net, usa.inquirer.net, and go to my column there, I update that column in ALDEF and say, look, it was Bloody Sunday in Selma yesterday. And we're going to talk about that today, too. 57 years after protesters faced down the Alabama state troopers in the name of democracy and voting rights. So that was happening in Selma yesterday. Kamala Harris was there remembering there at the foot of the Edmund Pettus Bridge how state troopers beat down on advocates like John Lewis who are advocating for voting rights. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, it continues to be Bloody Sunday, Bloody Monday, Bloody Tuesday, until I think the world decides it can no longer allow Russia to run roughshod over that country. I mean, that Lindsay Addario picture I just showed you is on the front page of my print edition of the Times. Ukrainian soldiers trying to tend to a mother and her two children, teenager and young daughter, who were trying to get across a bridge, trying to make a dash for freedom. They didn't make it. They got hit by an artillery shell. How much longer? No one wants World War III. I know. So no fly zones out. No one wants World War III. But how long must the world sit back and watch World War II and a half? And that's what we're talking about here. President Joe Biden gave an adequate first State of the Union address last week. I don't want to be misinterpreted. I don't disagree with Joe Biden in terms of really the guts of his speech, except for that one point on sanctions and how hard, how tough the West needs to be toward Putin and the Russians. I mean, here's the problem with that first State of the Union address last week. I don't think anyone really remembers it because it didn't really sufficiently let the world know that the U.S. was really standing up to Putin and the autocracy club, right? The ACs of the world. It didn't let the people know that, hey, America, we're the big dog in among the DCs, the Democratic club of the world. So Biden's speech was adequate, but it needed to really lift us into some kind of action. And it needed to strike fear into Vladimir Putin. But what did it do? A couple of days later, Putin does something that no one's ever done. He staged an artillery attack on a nuclear power plant. I mean, no one's done that. I mean, even Kim Jong-un isn't that irresponsible. So now Russia has a way of turning this modern device used for generating clean energy, a power plant. Putin has turned it into a de facto nuclear weapon. So I think it's time the world just stopped messing around with Putin, right? Even James Clapper over the weekend, he's the former director of national intelligence, normally restrained. People are starting to say outwardly without any hesitation, Putin, the 21st century Hitler. That was what James Clapper said. Usually it's one thing to think it, another thing to say it. And you let guys like me say it, and everyone else thinks it. The responsible people think it. But now James Clapper is saying Putin, quote, the 21st century Hitler. And frankly, it didn't seem inappropriate. So now it's time that we have to ask, what would you do? What would you do in the name of our nation? You know, would you pay $5 or more for gas? Hey, Emil, I'm sorry to tell you, the average in California is now $5. Yeah, I know. When I first wrote this piece, it was like 4 something. And the national average was like 3.5 or something. But now we're up to 5, over 5 in California. It's going higher. And you know, in California, we have all sorts of taxes on our gas, like 51 cents on the dollar goes to taxes. We got, and most of our oil comes from Ecuador, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq. We don't have to buy Russian. And that's the thing. Now we have to figure out how this is done, because it's not just us, it's all the other countries that have a stake in this. But believe me, if it was just the U.S. that stopped buying Russian, I mean, the estimate was something like $700 million a day. Funds goes to Russia. And it's almost untenable to think that, okay, here we are supporting this. We're supporting the Ukrainians against Russia, but at the same time, we're funding the war. This is among the difficulties in an intermingled, interconnected world. So maybe we just take the lead as Americans. We're not going to buy Russian oil. But everyone has a stake in this. Even you, who you might be a gig economy member. You might be someone saying, "Look, Emil, go ahead. You pay $5 for gas, $6 for gas." I don't want to pay $6 for gas. You say, "Well, maybe." I mean, I'm sure there's some people say, "Look," and this is what politicians are saying. They're saying, "You pay more than $5, maybe $6 for gas or whatever. What's going to happen?" Already the markets, the S&P 500 dropped like 3% today. Today, as we speak, the results are in. The market's taking a hit because there's all this talk about, well, are we going to go with these sanctions? And mind you, the only reason why we have to go with these sanctions is because what else will Putin listen to? What else will make it hurt? And so far, politicians like to point to people who would be hurt by sanctions, mainly the American public, who will see rising gas prices and they'll say, "Oh, this is an indicator of inflation, and you're not going to get my vote, Mr. Politician." And that's what the politicians are afraid of. Meanwhile, they just have to be leaders. But you know what? It's not an easy decision, and I'll cut Joe Biden a little slack here. Because if the other guy was in office, the twice impeached president, if that guy had won and was in the office of the presidency, he would give Putin everything Putin wanted. And that's not good for the West. It's not good for the world. Definitely not good for Ukraine. So this is where we are. We're more than a week into an unprovoked war against a sovereign nation. We have attacks on nuclear power plants. We have attacks on innocent people. And much blood has been spilled. Thousands of Ukrainian and Russian lives lost. More than 1 million Ukrainians forced to flee their homes to neighboring countries, Poland most notably, Romania for the transit to get through, hopefully to get to other countries in the European Union. It's sad what's happening to Europe. And it's time if America, if the U.S. truly is the leader of the free world, it's time we stepped up. I was watching over the weekend Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba. He said, we shouldn't buy Russian oil and gas. The country, America, shouldn't buy Russian oil and gas. We shouldn't buy anything from a company that operates in Russia. That means companies like Coke, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, they still operate in Russia. Kuleba said their money is soaked in Ukrainian blood. You watch the pictures of the war, you hear the Ukrainian officials. That was Dmytro Kuleba, the foreign minister. You heard Zelensky saying this war is murder, deliberate murder. And I know that even though you're like, if you're listening to this in California, you're about 8,000 miles away. 8,000 miles away from Ukraine. Anywhere in the country, you're about 5,000 miles away. But if you're saying, I got to do something, Emil, I got to do something about this war, well, you can. Don't support Russian businesses or companies that continue, multinational companies that continue to operate in Russia. And tell your senator, tell your congressman, no Russian oil or gas. America's got to lead. It's a little pain if it means we can stop the bloodshed in Ukraine. So we have Bloody Sunday in Ukraine. Really, Bloody Sunday, because we're talking about civilians, innocent civilians. I mean, that's the thing that gets me, the innocent civilians. So it's Bloody Sunday in Ukraine. Now Bloody Monday, it was Bloody Sunday in America at Selma. Isn't it funny? I didn't see hardly any coverage of it. I mean, I was looking, all the coverage was on Ukraine, as it should be. And I have one subscription service where I don't get C-SPAN. I'm sure C-SPAN was there. They had to be there. But I didn't get to see C-SPAN till later. Or it wasn't C-SPAN. I saw it on YouTube. And, it's important. It's important that we recognize the coincidence of Bloody Ukraine and Bloody Sunday 57 years after in America. Because it just shows you that the kind of thing that's present in Ukraine today, well, there's the anti-democratic forces present in Ukraine today. Well, they were out of whack in America 57 years ago in Selma. And they're slightly toned down. I mean, no one was beaten up yesterday in Selma. But there was a real appetite for anti-democracy in America today, 2022. Why didn't the two voting rights acts that are on the table, why didn't they pass? The Freedom to Vote Act. It would make voting a federal holiday, make voting easier, not harder. It would clarify the redistricting process so that it would be uniform and show the real impacts of population swings in certain districts. It would essentially end racist gerrymandering, or at least diminish the impacts of racist gerrymandering. We can't get the Freedom to Vote Act passed. And then we can't even get the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act passed. And that's named for the congressman, the hero, the young activist who was brutally savaged in Selma 57 years ago, who died just recently. John Lewis. I met him once. I didn't know. So this is how ignorant I was. I think most people, unless you follow these things to the T, they don't teach this in school. You'll know about Martin Luther King and what he did, and about his marches. You might have missed Selma. But I remember when I met him, I didn't really know the significance of Selma until I met him about 30 years ago. I should have known. But this is how ignorant our country is. But what happened was the voting rights today are less than the voting rights after the Voting Rights Act was passed in 65. That's because a couple of years ago they took out the federal oversight on any changes that would be made on certain districts so that people can make changes without going to the Department of Justice. They can make changes willy-nilly, even though it could be hurtful or harmful to the people. That's the kind of America we live in now. All right, it's not like Ukraine, but there's a feeling, an anti-democratic feeling in the South and among people like Joe Manchin who won't budge to allow for these measures to be heard and voted on. So on Sunday, Joe Biden said, we're putting them back on the table. He didn't really make a big deal about it. He made a statement. And that's good. But, it's not like any grand signal because, look, if he makes a grand signal and he loses, well, that's no good. It's politics. And that's just the way it works. But it was kind of like a backdoor thing. Hey, by the way, we're going to reopen up these two laws, try to get them, these two acts, try to get them passed into law. And then Kamala Harris was at Selma, and she gave an okay speech. Kamala Harris was okay. I like Kamala Harris because Kamala Harris was there, an Asian American was there, right? Because Kamala Harris, she's the first African American, Asian American vice president woman, which thank God, right? Thank goodness. So here's Kamala Harris. She's giving her speech. And here's Kamala Harris.
So today we gather here on hallowed ground. It was a chilly Sunday morning, 57 years ago, when 600 brave individuals set out from Selma. They were marching for the most fundamental right of American citizenship, the right to vote. They knew that if they wanted true freedom, if they wanted to claim what was theirs by birth and by right, they had to march on this bridge. In our nation's history, they launched.
They had to march across this bridge. And she says they are prepared for the worst, and on this bridge on that day, the worst was found.
They were kneeling when the state troopers charged. They were praying when the billy cubs struck. On this bridge, on that day, those brave marchers continued to push forward to secure the freedom to vote. And they were pushed back.
So this is an important thing. They tried to march. It took them 3 times to march, or they marched 3 times. First one was they got Bloody Sunday. They retreated. Then they came back a subsequent time. But people saw on television, just like people are seeing on television now, what's going on in Ukraine. They're seeing the news reports. They're seeing the Ukrainians. If you saw that, there was a video. I believe it's the same as what Lindsay Addario in the New York Times photographed. of the family shelled, killed. Civilians being killed. We're watching this. It's all verified. We're watching that all on television, on the news, in the same way 57 years ago, people saw the news of Selma. People saw the state troopers with their billy clubs knocking the crap out of these people. These people were just asking for the rights to vote. That's what's significant about Bloody Sunday. People saw that. They answered the call. Asian Americans, go to my ALDEF column, aaldef.org/blog. Read about Vincent Wu, who was just a graduate student in Illinois. He saw it. He had to get down there. Same way that we're seeing things happening in Ukraine. We got to feel a part of this. How can we help? The lead singer for PussyRiot, Nadia, she was on CNN. Can you imagine? Well, I mean, PussyRiot's been on the media in America before, but usually on talk shows, entertainment talk shows, the late night shows. But there was the lead singer of PussyRiot, Nadia, who was saying, look, I've raised $7 million on crypto. And when you're dealing with these multinational companies, I guess crypto makes perfect sense because it's on the blockchain. It's a currency that you can't mess with. Just remember your password. But, I mean, they're raising money. They're trying to help. So Kamala Harris in her speech goes back to that beating, goes back to how the images of Bloody Sunday were just all over black and white television. That was a big deal. 65. I remember. It's part of the news. And here she is 57 years later at the foot of the Edmund Pettus Bridge.
Today we stand on this bridge at a different time. We again, however, find ourselves caught in between injustice and justice, between disappointment and determination, still in a fight to form a more perfect union. And nowhere is that more clear than when it comes to the ongoing fight to secure the freedom to vote. A record number of people cast their ballots in the 2020 elections. It was a triumph of democracy in many ways. But not everyone saw it that way. Some saw it as a threat. And so, as powerful people have done many times in our nation's history, they launched an assault on the freedom to vote. Across the country, states passed anti-voting laws that ban drop boxes and restrict early voting, laws that make it illegal to give food and water to voters who are standing and waiting in line, laws that, put simply, make it much more difficult for people to vote with an expectation that then we will not vote, undemocratic laws, un-American laws. And so last year, we all joined together, we locked arms and lifted our voices and fought to pass federal voting rights legislation. We brought the Freedom to Vote Act, and yes, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, to the floor of the United States Senate. And on the night of January 19th, every Republican senator in the United States Senate voted to block passage of this law.
See, now this is important because many people forget that. You know how we have these short attention spans, but you got to remember how every Republican senator in the U.S. Senate blocked passage of a law that would make it easier for Americans, qualified, registered Americans, to vote. And this is something that you should not lose sight on when those Republican senators are up for reelection, because their limitations on us is a war on your rights, your civil rights, your right to vote. It's all connected. Your economic rights, when they vote to take away your right to franchise, your right to vote, the very basic thing in this democracy, it is, well, it's the existential democracy moment. You don't vote, you don't exist. So that was Kamala Harris. And let's go back to Kamala Harris.
Selma, the future of our democracy is being decided now. By you, by us, by the people. And ultimately, you are the ones, we are the ones who must protect the freedom to vote. And we must not stop there. Those who marched across this bridge, yes, they marched for the freedom to vote. They also marched for all the rights and freedoms that voting unlocks. They marched for economic justice, for social justice, for racial justice. And we must do the same. We must fight to ensure all the people of our nation, no matter where they start, have the opportunity to succeed. We must fight to move our nation forward while we reflect on why it matters. Just think, last week, President Biden made history when he nominated the first Black woman, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, to the highest court in our land. The court where decisions are made about the constitutional rights and liberties and freedoms of every American to generational effect. And I'll tell you what I think you know. Judge Jackson is a phenomenal jurist with a record of excellence, a record that proves her commitment not only to public service, but to equal justice and equal rights. And as she makes history, Judge Jackson, like us all, stands on the shoulders of giants. She and we are their legacy.
So that was a powerful moment when she brings up Ketanji Jackson, because Judge Jackson is going to go, even though she's been approved 3 times by the Senate on any number of things prior, it's going to be a fight and it's going to look ridiculous because she is extremely well qualified for this position. And it's history making. And I said it in my other column on the ALDEF blog, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, the ALDEF blog. Oh, to see that picture. There's Biden. On one side, he has Judge Jackson. And then on the other side, he has Kamala Harris. And both of whom were selected by Joe Biden. I mean, I can criticize Joe Biden for not being the second coming of LBJ and the Great Society, because it's not totally his fault. It's really the politics of the time. It's really how divided the country is and how difficult it is when you don't have a landslide like LBJ did in 1964. It's difficult to get your agenda passed. It just is. But you get that picture. I think it's on the ALDEF blog. I show Biden with Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, Kamala Harris. Those are two amazing things that he did for the BIPOC community, for America. And two well-qualified individuals who knows, would have been given a chance to excel and to show what they can do. Donald Trump, oh, he could have picked Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, but no, he picked Amy Coney Barrett instead. Oh, Emil, she's a Republican. Yeah, but if we're just looking at who is qualified, who is out there, who could make the best decisions for all Americans, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson is more qualified than the last two picks and the former twice impeached president, the selections he made. Yeah, that's the importance. That's the importance of having a president. And I think, look, I've told you why I think the harder sanctions are needed. Biden hasn't done it yet, but Biden has. It's going to take some maneuvering. But I will say this: Biden has done better for America, the free world, for democracy, than if the twice impeached former president had indeed won and were in office today. Heaven help us. Heaven help us if that other guy, the twice impeached president, was there, because he would have taken the U.S. out of NATO. That's unimaginable. Unimaginable now. But there were a lot of unimaginable things that happened within the last, from 2016 to 2020. And we had to grin and bear it. And then you see guys like Attorney General Barr get up there on NBC today and say essentially that Donald Trump is responsible for January 6th, but hey, you have a legal case against him. Well, I don't know if we have a legal case against Donald Trump, but here's Attorney General Barr finally coming forward and saying, hey, yeah, Donald Trump's responsible for what happened, the insurrection. Yeah, that was Donald Trump's fault. Oh, Trump, his response, very disappointed in Barr. Called Barr a coward. Barr's just trying to salvage his reputation, I think, because he knows the Trump administration was the worst thing for America and the world. What did it do? It essentially told Putin, you know what? You can do anything you want. The free world is paralyzed and won't act. Well, I think we're getting to that point where it's time to act. Pumping for peace. Read my column on ALDEF, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund. Also catch it on usa.inquirer.net. Like I said, how much longer can we go and just look at the news and I mean, it's not World War III, but it's World War II and a half. Except we're not acting as strongly as we can. All right. I should play my flip. Every talk show has one of those. You know, the flipping screen, the flipping sound effect. There were some other speeches. I'll get to those speeches tomorrow. And, you know, but I wanted to get Kamala out there because Bloody Sunday is important. I don't, like I said, I don't think, I hope the voting rights acts get passed, but I think it's more symbolic than anything. It's too bad. But I'll tell you what some other people are saying. They're the speakers who appeared who didn't get a lot of space and news stories, didn't get mentioned at all, but they were interesting. And I'll play them tomorrow. Check back tomorrow here on Emil Muck's Takeout. I do want to talk about a couple other things before we say goodbye for today. I saw two movies. Well, one is a series, and one's a movie. All right, Elizabeth Holmes. Look, when Elizabeth Holmes, when her verdict came down and she was found guilty for a number, not all of the charges, but a number, I think 4 out of the 11. A lot of people think, oh, well, maybe this is going to change Silicon Valley. I don't know if it's going to change Silicon Valley. I don't think it is, but it was a high enough profile case and everyone was curious about it. I had a kind of peripheral view of it because I didn't really care about Theranos. I wasn't into the image of Elizabeth Holmes wearing her black turtleneck and having that, you know, Steve Jobsian kind of thing going on. But I will say this, the movie or the series, The Dropout, is a well-made series. And I think the problem is it makes you sympathetic toward Elizabeth Holmes, despite the fact that she is lying and being deceitful and doing things that are not on the up and up with potential investors, which constitutes fraud. But still, you see this, and you see the depiction in The Dropout, which I saw on Hulu, and you say, well, you sort of see what she's doing, and you sort of see her passion. Is it that bad? Yes, it's bad. In case you are attracted to this vision of the young blonde capitalist entrepreneur wants to be a billionaire, that's what happens when you watch this. Just keep a level head and you'll say, oh, she's doing something desperate because she believes in her vision, but her vision is flawed. It didn't work. And yet she wanted to sell and protect the billion, you know, her status as a billionaire, her status as a visionary, which really is unethical and immoral. And yet I know there'll be people saying, oh, how, you know, I find a certain amount of sympathy for this woman. And now that you know that she's, you know, with this guy, they have a baby, they had to delay her trial because she had she was pregnant, she had a baby. There'll be more sympathy toward her. And I hope there isn't. I mean, if this case really is going to take Silicon Valley and say, hey, you got to play by the rules, Silicon Valley, all you startups, all you disruptors, you can't disrupt morals and ethics. You can disrupt everything else, how capitalism works, but you cannot disrupt morals and ethics. So enjoy the entertainment, which is the Elizabeth Holmes story, The Dropout, because it's amusing. I like Amanda Seyfried. I like all the actors. Bill Macy has a turn in there. It's actually a very compelling series, but do not come away sympathetic for Elizabeth Holmes. Use it as a kind of classics illustrated view on the whole story of the woman who was trying to protect people who were fearful of needles, essentially. A woman who was trying to make sure that if you were scared of being punctured by a needle to get a drop of blood, and I recall my mom. I took my mom once to get her blood drawn. They couldn't find they couldn't find a vein. They kept poking her, and I kept saying, "Oh." So I feel it. I know it, and I know me. It's happened to me. Not just my mom years ago, but me within the last few years. People trying to pump for or poke for blood and say, "Well, Emil, doesn't seem like you have a vein." Well, yeah, because I don't use my veins. I don't shoot up on a regular basis. I'm sorry. There's got to be a better way, right? So this idea that you can have one drop of blood for a variety of tests, you didn't have to draw, vials and vials of blood. This is the good side of tech, right? Technology can work when it solves human problems. Technology doesn't work when the technology becomes the human problem. Technology doesn't work when it becomes a AI kind of thing where it replaces humans. Technology should work in concert with humanity to solve our problems, not to be the problem. But people like Elizabeth Holmes get screwed up because they just see it as this is the way to make money. And where she crossed the line was the line between making money and service. And she forgot that service was in the equation. And it was just making money. So, look, that's a good thing to take away. Not that I'm sympathetic toward Elizabeth Holmes at all. I will say this. Sunny Balwani, that was a shock in the Elizabeth Holmes trial. That when the first thing she did was to go after Balwani and say, "Oh, this old Pakistani guy was like he was abusive in a relationship with her." I feel for Sunny Balwani, and I hope he doesn't take the brown guy fall, whereby Elizabeth Holmes, blonde, baby, young, is seen and looked on sympathetically because here's a brown guy, millionaire, falls in love with Elizabeth Holmes, secret relationship, ends up being part of the company. I'm not excusing what he may have done to carry on the fraud, but I just hope the prosecutors aren't light on Elizabeth Holmes and tougher on Balwani. He's a brown guy, but he's a millionaire. 40 million, no sympathy. Drives a Lamborghini, no sympathy. Maybe. But that's the thing. You think your Lamborghini, you think your millions make you equal, but in the end, they don't. When all they see is a brown guy taking advantage of a young white girl. So, do they throw the book at Balwani, Ramesh Sunny Balwani, and lighten it a bit on Elizabeth Holmes? I mention this because Sunny Balwani goes to trial this week. We'll see. I want justice to be done. But I don't want people to be hung up with appearances. And they might. Although, guy can afford a Lamborghini, he probably can afford a decent lawyer. I'm sure Sunny Balwani is going to be okay legally. But the public, how do you view Sunny Balwani? Elizabeth Holmes said he was abusive. So interesting. But look for the Balwani trial to start this week. Another switch. All right, one last bit. All right, so I saw another movie. I saw the Elizabeth Holmes movie or series on Hulu. Essentially a 3-hour movie. But I did see an actual 3-hour movie. I saw Drive My Car. Now, some of you will say, Emil, Drive My Car, that's Japanese. Yes, I know it's Japanese, but they're Asian. I'm rooting for it. I'm rooting for Drive My Car. Here's my quickie review. You might think when you're watching Drive My Car, you're going to say, okay, it's been an hour. Drive the damn car already. It's a long movie, but it's slow. It's deliberate. It's emotional. And it sets up everything for this big emotional thing. I look, among all the other movies that I saw, I haven't seen too many of the Oscar nominated movies because of COVID and whatnot. I did see Don't Look Up, and I did enjoy Don't Look Up. And I did think Don't Look Up was an excellent satire, an excellent movie tale. I love the stars. I love the humor. I love the serious points. I like Don't Look Up. But as cinema, oh man. Okay, I'm going to bring out the big words now. I'm going to bring out the elitist view of film. In terms of what film magic can be, I think Drive My Car is like, that's art. And I hate to bring up the A word, but what are we going to honor? When it comes to the Oscars, when the Oscars show up in about 19 days or so, 2 weeks, a little more than 2 weeks. Are you going to honor the kind of Hollywood stuff that, I didn't finish it, but I saw parts of West Side Story. Good. But the movie I'm talking about after last weekend is Drive My Car. It just is so emotional. It goes deep. It's slow. It doesn't pepper you, with all this, Oh no. Something happened. I don't know what happened there, folks. It just cut out on me. All right. Well, maybe it's the new music. Anyway, I I just think that there was something slow and artful, and then when it all came together, it just detonated this emotional feel, and you come away thinking, I just saw a work of art. And I think the Oscars should honor that. That's that's drive my. I mean, there's some sex. There's some. I mean, cars, drivers. You think, oh, maybe car crashes, Emil, or one. There's one car crash. It's not even that important. There's a murder. It's off screen. There's a little tension. It's a film about a film about a play. Chekhov, Uncle Vanya, and done in an unusual way where it's people, different languages, communicating to each other, and super titles so that an audience understands. And it's set in, of all places, Hiroshima. It's a beautiful film. Stay with it, though. You're going to say, drive my car. Are we there yet, Emil? Are we there? It's going to take a while. It revs up, but you get into it because it's all about emotion. It's all about the emotion. It's packed with it. Powerful. And you'll be thinking about it for days. Just like I am. I really drive my car. I mean, I'm surprised the actors didn't get any awards. Quiet, deliberate, slow art. Oh, that's not the sound I wanted. I wanted this sound. All right. Ah, someone said long but beautiful film indeed. Yeah, Nestor. Long but beautiful. And in the end, you'll say, thank you for helping me feel this film. Because it just goes deep. Believe me, after this film, then you can go watch the other Hollywood stuff. But don't forsake Drive My Car. I think there's a potential, like Parasite, when Parasite won the Korean film. Now that was kind of like that was more Hollywoody in a lot of ways. A little bit of art, but more Hollywoody. Drive My Car is a lot more art, worthy of an honor. Okay. Thank you for listening, everyone. You know, when you listen to the show, this is show 259. Women's Month. See, so Women's Month, we honored Kamala Harris, PussyRiot. We honored PussyRiot, and we honored. Let's see. I can only say her name if I see it. Nadia Tolokonikova. Nadia Tolokonikova. And what an amazing thing that she's raised $7 million for the Ukrainians just by dint of cryptocurrency. And one of the things she said is, you will never know in America how many people in Russia support the Ukrainians and are against the war and are against Putin. You know, she said that because there is this modern day Iron Curtain that now makes it against the law if you speak out against Putin. There's no free speech. You need a VPN to get by all the internet, and not everyone can. The sanctions are hurting people in Russia. And that's why, Putin can do anything he wants. He doesn't worry about getting votes. He's a dictator. And that's why the difference between Putin and Biden's got to worry about, well, I put economic sanctions like Emil Amok says, and people will say, hey, Joe, I can't pay $10 for gas. So this is the dilemma that the free world finds itself in. But speaking for myself, I'm happy to pump for peace. I'm not driving as much. But if I go to the gas tank and I'm paying $6, $7, $8 for gas until supplies even out, and they will. I mean, if the smart people get together and say, all right, this is how we can change sanctions on Venezuela, we can, chummy, be hard to chummy up to the Saudis, but we can chummy up to all those that we have sanctions against. We can get the oil reserves up. We can replace Russian oil. We can do that in California. And then they're talking in the California legislature about suspending the 51 cents on the dollar, the taxes, the gas tax. That'll help. I'm just saying, short of bearing arms, what can the average American do except just say no to Russian oil and gas and Russian businesses? So we talked about PussyRiot. We talked about Elizabeth Holmes. Talked about Ukrainian blood, Bloody Sunday, drive my car. Oh, God. Another Emil Guillermo's takeout. Thank you very much. You can always check out my my blogs, aldef.org/blog, usa.inquirer.net, amok.com. I usually post the replays. We're here Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific Live, usually a little earlier. Friend us, follow us, do whatever Facebook says. They're not that bad. Give us a finger or a thumb, whatever finger they ask for. Just follow us on Facebook at emilguillermo.media. In fact, if you watch this on Facebook at emilguillermo.media, you could put on chat right now and say, yeah, Emil, we're here on Facebook. We see you on Facebook. Or if you're on YouTube, I don't think I can see on YouTube. I see that after the fact. But you can watch it live. You can watch it recorded there or watch it on, where is it? Twitter. People love Twitter. You can watch this live on Twitter. On Twitter, yeah. Emil Amok 259, this is. Emil Amok 260 tomorrow. I'll share with you the one reverend that I really liked when I watched the Bloody Sunday stuff. We'll talk also about other things. Something will come up. So, Bill Cosby, Supreme Court said they're not going to touch what the state court did on Cosby. So he's essentially a free, but not, I don't know. We'll talk about Cosby tomorrow because it's complex. He's essentially admitted what he's done, but they can't convict him because he was given a kind of immunity. He was told he wouldn't be prosecuted if he told the truth. So he told the truth. Who would have thunk it? Bill Cosby telling the truth. Essentially saying, yeah, I did that. And then later they used it to convict him, which then Cosby said, hey, well, wait, you can't do that. You said I'd be. Someone screwed up there. Anyway, regular viewers of the show know that at this point, I give you a little pep talk. I say, if you feel in doubt, if you feel at all like, the world's against me, Emil, what am I going to do? Well, you take this arm here and put it in there. Take this, give yourself a squeeze. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. You're all right. You're enough. You're going to silence the inner critic. You're okay. You're really okay. And as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be safe. And may you live with ease. Till tomorrow. I'm Emil Guillermo.